this house over here that we're looking at is strictly for our enforcement division, our training personnel, our criminal investigators that are doing the investigation of somebody breaking in your house or your car or whatever. And like I said, none of that really affects the jail really, none of that affects what's going on here. Because we still have the crimes. We may not ever catch whoever broke in your car. So whether they're in jail or not, we still have to investigate that. They may have left with one little piece of evidence. And anymore, we have to collect every bit of evidence and we have to have a place to store it. We have evidence over there we've had for 20 years because, and even longer. In fact, since I've been sheriff, we just got rid of the gun that was involved with the Tina Moyer murder, which happened before, when I was a kid. That's how long we have to keep that evidence.
So Sheriff, your current footprint in terms of square footage at the admin building is 20,000, roughly 20,110. And what's in the proposal is 42,000. That does not include the garage. So that's, I'm kind of just keeping that separate to not muddy the waters. So, roughly a difference of 22,000 in increased space. One of the concerns that I shared with Larry is also in that proposal is some staffing increases, some assumptions that you'll need X amount of people to offset that. And so if I'm following correctly, I'll look to Larry to keep me honest on the numbers, but looking at your existing staff, it has 68 individuals for that square footage. And Larry, I'm on page 12 of that notice. In the future, 2035, you're planning on 113. Can you help me understand that many, like if you expect that much personnel growth? Because obviously the footprint of how big this is a direct driver to the expense, which is my root concern is the expense. So I'm trying to kind of back into that to understand that.
Well, and I think a lot of that is going on the projections of the county growth. So the more people get out in the county, living out in the county, the more crimes are prevalent that are going to happen out there. So you will have to increase in personnel as far as your deputies that are going to be out there, detectives. Again, I tell you that out of the counties I listed, we're the smallest as far as our criminal investigation division. We have 5, and the least amount was Brandon County, we have 7. So, those are things that will have to increase. Right now, when I came to the sheriff's office, we would send 3 deputies out there on the streets at one time. To me, that's unsafe. So we require at least 4 out there. And there are many nights that's all we have is 4 officers out there. As your population grows, the individual housing developments grow, you'll need more people out there to patrol those to keep the crime down. And so I think that's what they're looking at as far as their growth and those kind of things. You have more crimes, you gotta have more deputies, you gotta have more more detectives to investigate those crimes.
And so one of the biggest jumps that I saw was on the civil warrants and records. So today it's at 15, and 2035 it's slated for 29. Will you help me understand that role and how that growth?
I don't know about their numbers where they came up with those. That was an individual that made a study. Our civil division right now, we have 3 guys in there that serve all of the process papers throughout this county. And our warrants guys, we have 3 in there that serve all of our warrants. We have right at 10,000 warrants right now that they try to go out and locate. I can tell you that those guys are never in the office because they're out chasing people. And if I could put a little leash on them, then we wouldn't have the expansion at the jail sometimes. But they have warrants out for them, and they're wanted. And then I have one guy that's just strictly does intervention throughout the United States, tracking back people.
So Larry, will you help me understand the numbers? Because I was told that this came directly from the either elected officials or the department leads as well.
Yeah, this came up during the interview process. This day, honestly, I was not at that meeting, so I'm not exactly sure what transpired in that. But this is the numbers that you have correct here. So it's a forecasted number? Yes, it's forecasted numbers for 15 currently to 29 in 2035. I do want to clarify a couple of numbers too that we're talking about here. Currently the number you had was right, Commissioner Maguia, on the 20,000 roughly number of the existing square footage. Projected square footage needs currently, this is back in the 2013 study, was up to 29,000 square feet. And so there are some spaces that you all saw walking through there are so way too small. There are spaces that don't exist right now that they need. And then what accounts for some of the other additional square footage is circulation. I mean, if you go through that building right now, the hallways are like this wide. I mean, you can't even have two people really pass without somebody turning sideways. So there's an increase in some gross square footages through the building. They're just occurring because of circulation needs.
Yeah, I was gonna say on the, as far as the square, or the room as well, we have 3 different places out at the barn that we use for storage evidence as well, that are not calculated in this, but are calculated into the footprint. We have a storage bay for vehicles that are seized that we have to have evidence with. And there's also, again, the storage that we have out there for our evidence that we have stored out there.
And I wasn't, he has the breakdown of the storage separate from that, so that's not included in the counts.
I mean, we're not talking in the vehicle maintenance storage.
Yeah, I'm sheriff maintenance garage is separate. That's not in the square footage I'm talking about, and sheriff storage building is separate. That's not in the, my comparison.
I agree with that, but you know, I understand what I'm saying. We have two rooms that we use at the maintenance barn that should be in this building because we have no storage to put it in here.
So all that's going to be.
We have a garage out there that we have cars that we impound at times or have been involved in a homicide or something like that. We have to bring them in for processing. And so we have that facility at the barn. However, in the new footprint, it's in the administration building.
Correct, but the dollars that I'm speaking about and the staff, that I'm keeping those separate because I recognize that. I think my concern is, and just for the record, Sheriff, I'm with you. I would not negate that we need a new sheriff admin building. That infrastructure has lots of issues. I'm with you there. My concern is as it relates to the expense, which is a direct driver to how big we build it. So when I'm looking at the programming needs, which is staff often, what we're seeing and what we're planning for is a 66% increase in staff. And as a commissioner's court for the last 25 years, I don't know that we've made that type of jump in any of our departments or could make that type of jump even in 2035. So I'm trying to understand that a little more because it relates to the expense for the facility. And I'm looking to Larry to help me here because if I'm misstating anything, please keep these in mind.
Yeah, and I'm going to say a couple other things first about the overall square footage, because what the sheriff was saying was correct. I know it could be a little confusing, but we're looking at really 20,000 to 29 just to keep up with his current improvements. Then there's an additional jump from 29,000 to roughly 35,000. That's the projected additional need to 2035. That equates to basically a little less than 1% increase per year over that to 2035. Then we have the increase up to 42,000. And how that occurred was actually some of the offices that are currently administrative in the detention center moving over to the sheriff admin. And then what the sheriff was mentioning is we also took 2 considerably sized spaces that are currently at the movie site and added them to the sheriff admin building. They're currently not in the building now, and they weren't programmed originally when we did the study a couple of years ago. Those are the largest increases we had, honestly, in this recent reprogramming. That included the evidence storage and then also the vehicle inspection area. So the additional square footage or the additional staffing here, I guess Sheriff and I can kind of talk about this both together, but first thing I can guarantee you what we're going to do with the sheriff, and we've talked about this, is revisit some more detailed aspects of this program once we really get into it. And if there are some things we can reduce out of the program and make any reductions, we're going to do that. I mean, we want to make this as most economical building as we can and just serve what your needs are now with some abilities for expansion. As far as the staffing, I guess the sheriff can address that a little bit more than me, but I'm sure that's something that we're coming before court too, that it's not a guarantee of what's going to happen, it's some projections that are just estimated right now. you know,
It's
so.
hard to project what I'll need in 2035. So, I mean, it really depends on the growth of the county. So to say that I'll go from 15 to, what you said, 29 or whatever, I don't know that'll happen.
And I guess I'm just saying, based on our tax rate, I don't expect a lot of people to be building in Potter County from a residential perspective. We're heavy on the commercial side, which is, I think, what keeps us afloat, quite honestly. So I'm just trying to think through that and understand that as it relates to the expenses, so.
Yeah, if we can build less, I mean, I think.
And I think that was one of the things that I brought to the table as far as the planning strategy. Don't go out and building an elaborate building, building a metal building with a brick facade. I mean, those are some of the things that I wanted to do to cut the cost as well. So I understand where you're coming from. I truly do. I just hope that you realize that I'm trying to be as conservative as well. But like I said, in the same aspect, I don't want to build just enough for what we have now. We have to consider future. How much of that is going to be, I mean, how big and how far do we go for the future? I'm not a fortune teller, I couldn't tell you. I mean, and I agree with you, it's kind of hard to say whether it's going to be commercial or whether we're going to have residential. I see lots of it out there though, so it's hard to say. But yeah, I mean, again, as far as staffing, is something that, you know, that may be a little bit inflated, you know.
One thing to make the Commissioners Court aware of, back in the early '80s, the Commissioners Court elected to build a new district courts building. At that time, they had the entire fifth floor totally vacant, made for future growth. So, I mean, the commissioners through the years have looked at that. One of the things that's happened in Potter County through a lot of the research that I've done through the years, back through the '70s, '80s, Potter County Commissioners Court was very notorious to go out and take a piece of property that they claimed through back taxes or, you know, they give to them whatever it may be for a fire station to utilize as a building instead of having a proper building for the function of the department. So we have seen that throughout the years. You know, it wasn't until probably the mid-90s that Commissioners Court elected, hey, let's start taking care of the employees of the building and building the buildings for the future for what we're doing. Santa Fe building was a prime example. We moved into that building, we utilized that thing to the fullest extent today. This building right here is maxed out as well. The sheriff for his building over there, I honestly hate to see you go in and start trying to attempt to cut space out. Now, if it's warranted, when we go through our value engineering, yes, it's definitely needed at that time. Please allow us to move forward today with this design and not just start chopping it.
Well, Commissioner Kelly, I'm sorry, go ahead.
You know, I have to rely on all of you experts on giving us your best opinion, but I just a feeling. Let me give you my. I am not a pessimist on how Potter County is going to grow. I think we are going to grow. Take a trip to Bushland sometime, somebody, and see where buildings happening. Are they incorporated and taken care of by other police departments or fire departments? Absolutely not. We have to do it. And so, how are we going to do that? 4 people out on the street not going to do it. So, I trust what you're telling us. I think we can move
I will have to agree with you there. I mean, that area has grown so much in the last year that they have streets out there that aren't even on Google Map. I couldn't even find the location for an alarm call. It is growing out that way. I just want to throw one other thing out there. I mean, you know, the police department, when we left the building over here, we went over the old Pioneer Natural Gas building. We occupied 4 floors. There's 7 floors in that building. And they're to the point where they're remodeling the 7th floor now because they've had so much growth in their department. And I know that's apples and oranges per se, but just talking about how much the crime has grown and what they've got to do and the requirements. You know, Randall County, I mean, 15 years ago, they built that and the sheriff says, we're out of room. We are out of room at 52,000 square feet and they don't have, of course, their population is just a little bit above ours now, but they don't have near the jail space that we have either.
And I think it would honestly be interesting, I mean, good exercise too, because there's different ways you can plan for growth. You know, the best way is usually to add some into your buildings. It tends to be that there's individual departments that have growth that you need to plan for, expansion. But other times there's a larger area, and I think one thing we can look at is, you know, is there a larger area that, we could plan for growth in looking through the different departments like Commissioner Magoo did. Maybe there's some areas where we don't fully finish out. You know, we don't build every single office. You know, we build perimeter wall and leave the space open, leave all the infrastructure in there for some mechanical and electrical, so that you can finish it out if you want in the future. It'd be more economical now, but also you're kind of making a commitment to do that. And, you know, maybe what we do is we go through the schematic design phase and come back here, you know, present to the court, you know, the updated program and building plans, cost, and let you see where we are and where we're going and career we got back on. So,
Actually, like the fire station.
Right, and I appreciate what Mike iterated on that. If I may indulge the court for just a few minutes, and because we went to great pain and interest of being as transparent as we can, and that's why we developed this committee, the Citizens Committee that we brought on board. I know a few of them are here this morning. I would like, if they are so desire, I'd like to just for a few minutes to hear from them. They went through this whole process of going through all of these rules. And
Sure you want to hear from me?
I do want to
You'll
hear
be
from Mr.
spending a
Harris.
lot
Yes,
more
I
money
do.
than you're spending now.
Craig?
My name is Craig Davis.
What do you want to add to what we've talked about so far?
Well, I was brought on board as a citizen member of the committee, and I have toured the facilities, the sheriff's office, the courts building, and the jail. And the building we're talking about now, the sheriff's administration building, I'm a real estate appraiser by profession, and that's a repurposed building. It was not built for the purpose it's being used for. So functionally, it's what we would call in the appraisal business obsolete. It does not function for the purpose it was intended. The intended use was, I think originally it was the old National
Cash.
cash register, so it's retail, office space, and it's been repurposed. And so its economic life and its function are not to its current purpose. So after touring it and seeing it, you can see that it's overcrowded, it's cramped space, and it's just not functioning for the design or for its needs.
Mr. Harris, I'd like to ask you, you know, you've seen the, Mr. Davis, you've seen the future plans for Potter County, this building, and what, give me your observations on what you feel about the size and what the committee goes through.
Well, I think the current, projections are what, 29 to 30,000, or roughly 28 to 29,000 for the current needs. And then you have to look into the future, and as they've looked at other, Randall counties already, they had a relatively modern facility, and they're already outgrowing their facility. So based on what similar counties of similar sizes have been doing, you have to plan for the future. What that is, I mean, who knows? I think the projection as far as growth is pretty conservative. So,
Thank you. Thank you for serving on the committee.
Yeah, correct. Thank you very much for your time.
Mr. Harris?
Sure you want to hear
Yes,
from me?
sir. I certainly want to hear from you.
Yeah, let's just-
My name's Anthony Harris, pastor of St. John Baptist Church here in Amarillo, Potter County. And I always, when I first got on this committee, I referred to an old commercial back in the 60s. Kind of date myself, but the commercial stated it was an old oil Fran commercial. It said, pay me now, pay me later. And I think that's the question the court has to ask itself. And when you look at the current facility, and we may say right now we're heavily industrial on this side, but I can, from past experiences of places that I've lived, Vancouver, Washington, when I left there, you had about 70,000 people. Came back 10 years later, they were close to 200,000 at the cost of growth. And they built, before I left, with the 70,000, they built a East Precinct building, law enforcement building, administrative building. And the day they opened it up, it was already too small and could not serve its purpose. And that's always my concern. If the sheriff and the experts, they kind of know what they're talking about, they do this for a living, and I always defer to them. And from my perspective, what they're trying to do, we don't know what's gonna happen in 2035, 2045, and I believe we ought to build for the next 50 years. While some of us may not be here then, but I think it's wise to look to the future, build for the future, plan for the future. And again, we also, I think, have to look at the point that you build it now, if you hold off, for every year you hold off, the cost of it keeps going up. And pretty soon, you'll have people asking questions, why didn't you do this last year? Why didn't you do this 10 years ago? And so I'd hate for us to be 10 years out from now, still wrestling with this, and now the cost is doubled, tripled, quadrupled. So that's kind of my take. We can either pay now or pay later. Either way, you're gonna have to do it eventually. So why keep putting off the inevitable? So that's kind of.
Thank you very much for serving on our committee. We appreciate that.
Well, Judge, I just have two comments and then I'll let it rest, whatever it may be. As it relates to the agenda items, to moving forward with construction documents, authorizing demolition and environmental cleanup, again, I will speak that I lean on heavy transparency. And in my opinion, we should be having public meetings out in the precinct, whoever will listen, to communicate this message, because it's only recently that we have had the opportunity to get citizens on this committee. To my knowledge, this dollar amount and the district clerk's building dollar amounts have not been made public. So I feel like it's very presumptuous of us to be taking action to demolish and move to construction when we haven't even said, this is how much it's gonna cost.
Well, let me speak to those, if I may, Commissioner. And first of all, you're not making a commitment. I mean, the courtship's getting a little bit more serious now, but you're not making a commitment yet to go to construction. And some of the concerns you brought up earlier with regard to sizing appropriate for today and with consideration for the future, those are things that this committee's work is not nearly done. We start getting into the design work for the construction, actually talking about construction, that's when the work really gets serious. I mean, to where everyone's gonna have to be bored to death talking, listening to Larry talk about, what it really is. And it's very cumbersome, but it's necessary to get that, because we're just talking about a vision still today. And that vision is going to be defined as we go through this work. Now, there are two other recommendations that are being made, are basically for work that has to be done one way or the other. The demolition of those, and Mike can speak to this more so than I can, but the demolition of the old jail, the old brig, it's one of the things that Mr. Harris was talking about earlier, that should have happened 10 years ago. Because those are public safety risks as they are right now. Yes, to a certain extent, you're cleaning the palette potentially for the construction of a new facility, but at the same time, whether that new facility is built or not, those two buildings need to come down. And so we have an opportunity to do that, or the county has an opportunity to do that. Now, because it needs to be done, you've got the design person that will be around to facilitate and oversee the demolition of that work. Mike's been doing a considerable amount of detailed work and trying to lay the groundwork for the environmental hygienists to be up here to do what needs to be done to make sure that the hazardous waste materials in those two facilities are dealt with. That's one of the three recommendations that are being made that needs to happen anyway. So I don't think there's an issue of transparency there.
Well, John, I would disagree with there's much work to be done, but what I'm saying is to the layman, this action to me in terms of demolition and construction documents, even though there's a lot of work to be done, implies that we are now moving in one direction or the other, and we still, at this moment, have not given the dollar amount to the public. And I will stand by, I think that's an incorrect way to inform our taxpayers. So that, I want to say that openly and honestly to the court, because I feel like we We owe them that, these are their dollars. We're entering into movement without even telling them how much it's gonna cost.
Let me ask this question, before and see if we're all on the same plane here. Can we, and in fact, divulge the incremental amounts that we know that we're going to expand on this to the degree of, as we proceed to this project? Because we know we're going in this direction, because we all know that we have a crumbling infrastructure, we're gonna have to address this issue. So, but to the degree of where we are incrementally, and we,
You'll have to be doing referendums.
Yeah, if we agree to go with design, we have to, that has to be.
Yeah, and I was gonna,
Explanation, yeah.
I was gonna summarize my argument with that information, if you would, Commissioner. Because you're also gonna have to take action. And may I conclude a thought with Commissioner Diaz? Because the other item, too, is to address an issue that you currently have today with IT, infrastructure. Even again, if you're not doing anything out there, you need to do something to enhance the IT system that you've got out of the jail. So, you know, the second and third of those two recommendations really, I mean, that's stuff that needs to happen one way or the other. That's not necessarily doing something that's new, but it could support something new down the road if you guys feel that's correct. Now, if you had an opportunity to kind of look through the memos that were in your agenda packet, there was a cost associated with each one of these recommendations.
But it only gives the percentile as it relates to the design subtotals. I mean, a dollar amount to the taxpayer, this project cost X. This project costs X. Totality of projects equals this.
But that's making the assumption that, I mean, you're doing the design work before the design work's complete.
We're making percentile assumptions based on the design work.
Absolutely, but those numbers, it's your discretion. You don't decide what it is you want to do. I'm just saying that the whole purpose of going through this design and construction document is to confirm or to deny whatever the values are in the master plan today. And those are going to be subject to change based on, I mean, this committee would have done what you suggested earlier anyway. They would have looked at, taken a good hard look at the footprint, at, you know, space allocations and all that stuff all over again to make sure this is correct. Because what the committee wants to do is to bring to you what they believe is to be the very best design for this building to meet the county's needs for at least the next 35 years.
And so I'll defer and leave that up to the judge of when she feels is appropriate to share those dollar amounts and or the committee. But I do stand by these agenda items, and to me individually, they're very bold with us not communicating the dollar to the taxpayer. And then the second comment, and I promise Judge I'll stop right here, is because of these dollar amounts, I would also advocate for a second lens, a second opinion, not the whole pragmatic process, not everything we've gone through for 3 to 4 years, but just an outside neutral party to say, build this, and yes, we think the dollars are appropriate, or we think there might be an opportunity to save. And again, I'm just looking at the big picture and the total cost, so I would be remiss if I did not say that publicly as well.
Well, I think that was part of the sheriff's thought when he was doing the comparative analysis between counties of comparable size. You know,
I think we could get there where we all, committee and with the SMEs that we have in place. That the court is kept abreast of this ongoing as we work through this process. I'm not certain that we need to bring that source to do what we are elected and charged to do. But given that we have our folks that are giving us advice and walking through that methodically, that process. So,
you know, this is your project. So whatever you direct us to do by way, you know, the public needs to be engaged. So you tell us how you want us to engage, and we'll engage the public.
one of the things that we talked about, and that is, Commissioner, you may feel that we need to be a little bit more engaging with the public than we have. And we've visited on this, and this is why we charged the committee So maybe we might be a little innovative and, you know, we better go about doing that, not to interrupt the process that we have ongoing now, but just to inform as we work through this process.
So,
Do we say, did we give a cost today? Are we allowed to do
are you
that?
talking about cost of the
Sure, payment.
master
Sure,
plan?
payment.
Oh, you can do whatever you want. I don't think it's a secret. I think it's the only thing about throwing out raw numbers like that is that everybody gets it in their head that that's what it's gonna cost. And that's a visionary number today. You know, if I say visionary, we're talking, if I may, $15 million for the development of a new, sheriff's administration facility, but that's just the vision today. That vision needs to be refined under all the constraints of conservatism, wisdom. I mean, you don't just want to be frugal for the sake of being frugal. You want to be wise in looking towards your future need. But then everybody hangs their hat on the fifth, you know, okay, that becomes the number. It could be something much less at the end of the day too. But there, I said it. And I don't work for you guys, so you can fire me if you want. So I mean, but I mean, the numbers that you're looking at today have to be spoken of openly because you've got $1 billion in the budget for the courthouse. I mean, for the sheriff's administration facility today. If you run the numbers real quick, you're looking at the sum total of all three recommendations comes to $1.2 million, $2,201,000, right?
Those are just the recommendations, that's not the project.
That's right. That's
Okay,
just
I
the
just want to be
recommendation.
clear that we still
Yeah,
have set that number.
that we can be very firm on.
Those numbers, what?
What's that?
1,200,000 something.
1,002,000, yes,
That's just what we're talking about.
for those three recommendations. And then I think it's probably, and let me ask you all, so it's not a short study. Do you have any questions about the three recommendations that we made that we haven't addressed already?
I don't. I'm on the committee, I'm 100% in, so. Jason, is there anything you wanted to add to anything? that was
No,
said
if
today?
you guys don't have any questions, I'm not gonna step in it, so.
What we'll do through this process is, when we start going through the document design, you've got your schematic, design development, your CDs, those will be brought to the commissioner's court at each interval for y'all to recognize and approve. And Larry's had a great idea as far as getting the public involved.
Yeah, I was just mentioning to Mike, you know, what we really ought to do is when we get through schematic design before we bring it to Commissioner's Court, maybe we lay out drawings and the program and design where we're at and let people have some comments. They can put Post-its on. We can present it publicly too, if you'd like. And then come to Commissioner's Court and, you know, kind of mention the results of that and how we're gonna make some adjustments and where we're at right now. And then we go to the next phase, design development, and keep the public up abreast in Commissioner's Court vote.
Will you share the cost at that time?
I think that's up to the county to decide. But
I'm just saying, if we're looking at
We'll be
debt,
updating
the
costs.
impact of debt, those
Yeah.
are not just visionary numbers, those are true
Well, and that's-
dollars that we're entertaining on behalf of the taxpayer, that we haven't even told them the amount.
And architects will owe us the opinion of probable cost as we start getting into these documents.
Yeah, every single one of those phases, we're gonna come back not only with updated design based on what
But we
we got
don't
from the committee
know.
with the cost.
I think that's a good idea. I like that idea of kind of going in as close as we can. We all know that the dollars will be fixated until it is there. So, but as we process through this, it's all a little bit better understanding of where we are. So, get the public information.
Okay, Mr. Feingold wants to say one other thing. Alan.
Oh,
I think it's pretty obvious to me that new sheriff's administration facility, and it does seem to me very plausible that you would build approximately 40,000 square feet into it. Just to give you a benchmark, and this might apply to some degree also to the proposal for a new county courts building, or I should say a state courts building. When the city of Amarillo constructed the city hall back in 65, 66, the approximate cost was equivalent today to about $175 a square foot. Now, it may be because of increased construction costs above the CPI and also because of security concerns that you might have to go to, say, $200 a square foot for the Sheriff's Administration building, maybe $250 a square foot for the proposal for the state courts building. I think that would be a pretty good benchmark. Of course, there might be some dispute about that, but you could at least tell the public, this is the ballpark you're thinking about. And as you go along in the design process, you inform the public about the various systems that are going to go into the buildings, including not only the structure, but such things as the electrical system and why you might need more sophisticated electrical outlets than are commonly put into an office building. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Moving on then, I make a motion that we accept the design services contract with Architects for the development of construction documents for new sheriff admin. And, allow me, I guess, to execute the contract. Do we want to do it one at a time or all three? We do all three?
I think you're flexible.
Okay, and to also authorize the county to proceed with the demolition and environmental cleanup of the old jail and brig, and to authorize the initial design work of the fiber network that would serve the IT needs of both the county jail and the proposed sheriff admin at the same time. That's my motion.
Second.
You have a question?
Okay.
We have the funds to cover all that.
We are $201,000 short, and I would request include in your motion to transfer money from the district courts project to the sheriff's administration project.
So moved.
So, does that have any, negative connotations on the transference of those funds as we look at? Nothing.
Okay, have a motion and a second, all in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed? 4-1. Thank you.
And let me add as a caveat to this, that we have discussed, and I think we're all probably on the same page, that we want to continue to be as transparent as we can, and have all the public and all of the explorations as we move forward. So that's extremely be considerate of that.
Absolutely. Number 20, employment items, road and bridge, to the resignation of Nicholas Vygotsky as summer mower effective May 27/15, and the resignation of Dion Powell as summer mower effective May 20/15. And also the county extension department resignation of Tina Hicks as office manager, and also the hiring of Tina Hicks as county extension agent. So I need a motion on each one of these.
I make a motion that we accept the employment items as presented.
Second.
A motion and a second, all in favor, raise your hand. 5-0. Jail report today is 483, 93 of those are females, and nobody's in Childress or Franklin County at all in Florida.
On that note, I think, to hear that, we had discussed some breakdowns of the incarceration figures, I think that was an interesting point that shared with me this morning, and, share where those numbers came from.
About 12.6% are misdemeanor. I think that's the count today.
Usually the report I'm getting is a day behind, which current.
Is that something we could include in this recap, that when we meet in court, like the count, 93 females, 0 children, X amount?
It's sent out every day, I can send it to you.
Oh, no, I don't need it specifically, I just meant in terms of the recap, how we get posted as a court, that'd be great.
Just kind of additional information at this point. For a time, I was keeping the extensive record of jail population, so that figure is the percentages are pretty well consistent with what they've been for 10, 15 years. Misdemeanors really go about 20%.
Okay. County insurance items, they do anything? They've been very quiet today. One way to put it, yeah. And no executive session and agenda items for next time. With Potawatomi County President District nominating, so I'll be thinking about that. And possibly the Veterans Highway if that gets done.
And Judge, I just have one update for the court of a homework item that I committed to working with Constable Maurice Jackson is his inventory list as part of his departure. And so Carrie did provide a full inventory list. I've been working with Carrie and David, and I did reach out to Maurice. We walked through each one of these. Some of the items we don't want back, boots, clothing, those kind of things, but he is scheduled to ship those back to David's office so that we have them ready for the new constable to take her seat. So I just wanted
And
to.
she starts work on Friday, correct? Boots, not the boots.
Yes.
Okay, that is all we are adjourned.